The Bonapartiste was a conservative, monarchist and imperial political faction in France in the 19th century. The Bonapartistes desired an empire under the House of Bonaparte, the Corsican family of Napoleon Bonaparte and his nephew Louis. The honeybee was a prominent political symbol in the empire of Napoleon Bonaparte, representing the Bonapartist bureaucratic and political system. History. Bonapartism had its followers from 1815 forward. Among those who never accepted the defeat of Napoleon and France at Waterloo or the Congress of Vienna, with Napoleon I's death in exile on St. Helena in 1821, many of these persons transferred their allegiance to other members of his family. After the death of Napoleon's son, the Duke of Reichstadt, Bonapartist hopes were divided among several different members of the family. The disturbances of 1848 gave this group hope. Bonapartists were essential in the election of Napoleon I's nephew, Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, as President of the Second Republic. They gave him the necessary political support when he discarded the constitution in 1852 and proclaimed the Second Empire. Louis Napoleon Bonaparte assumed the title Napoleon III. He acknowledged the brief reign of Napoleon's son Napoleon II in 1815 at the end of the 100 Days. In 1870, Napoleon III led France to a disastrous defeat by Prussia in the Franco-Prussian War, and he subsequently abdicated. Afterwards, Bonapartists continued to aspire and to agitate for another member of the family to be placed on the throne. However, from 1871 forward, they competed with monarchist groups that favored the restoration of the family of Louis Philippe, King of the French, and also with those who favored the restoration of the House of Bourbon, the traditional French royal family. The three monarchist factions combined were likely stronger than the Republicans of their era, but they never united on supporting one candidate for monarchy. Monarchist fervor eventually waned and the French Republic became accepted as part of French life. Gradually Bonapartism became a king of civic faith of a few romantics rather than any sort of practical political philosophy. When Eugene Bonaparte, the only son of Napoleon III, was killed in action while serving as a British Army officer in Zululand in 1879, Bonapartism ceased to be a political force. The current head of the family is the Prince Napoleon, great-great-grandson of Napoleon I's brother Jérôme Bonaparte by his second marriage. He has a son Jean and a brother, Jérôme Bonaparte, unmarried. There are no remaining descendants in the male line from any other of Napoleon's brothers. No serious political movement exists with the goal of restoring any of these men to the imperial throne of France. Bonapartist claimants. The law of succession, Napoleon I established on becoming emperor in 1804, provided that the Bonapartist claim to the throne should pass firstly to Napoleon's own legitimate male descendants through the male line. At that time, he had no legitimate sons and it seemed unlikely he would have any, due to the age of his wife Josephine. Through the Catholic eyes, his eventual response was the unacceptable one, since he engineered a dubious annulment, without papal approval, of his marriage to Josephine, undertaking a second marriage to the younger Marie-Louise, with whom he had one son. The law of succession provided that, if Napoleon's own direct line died out, the claim passed first to his older brother Joseph and his legitimate male descendants, through the male line, then to his younger brother Louis and his legitimate male descendants through the male line. His other brothers, Lucien and Jerome, and their descendants, were omitted from the succession because they had either politically opposed the emperor or made marriages of which he disapproved. Napoleon had one son with Marie-Louise, in whose favor he abdicated after his final defeat in 1815. Although the Bonapartes were now deposed and the old Bourbon monarchy restored, Bonapartists recognized this child as Napoleon II. However, he was sickly, virtually imprisoned in Austria, and died young and unmarried, without leaving any further direct descendants of Napoleon I. When the Bonaparte Empire was restored to power in France in 1852, the emperor was Napoleon III, Louis Bonaparte's only living legitimate son. In 1852, Napoleon III, having restored the Bonaparte to power in France, enacted a new decree on the succession. The claim first went to his own male legitimate descendants in the male line. If his own line died out, the new decree allowed the claim to pass to Jerome, Napoleon's youngest brother who had previously been excluded, and his male descendants by Princess Katharina of Württemberg in the male line. The only remaining Bonapartist claimants since 1879, and today, have been the descendants of Jerome and Catherine of Württemberg in the male line. List of Bonapartist claimants to the French throne since 1814. Those who rule are indicated with an asterisk. The following are the list of Bonapartist claimants to the imperial throne. Napoleon I of France ruled 1804–15, abdicated 1815, died 1821. Napoleon, Duke of Reichstadt, son of Napoleon I, styled Napoleon II by Bonapartists, briefly reigned as emperor in France for a fortnight in June–July 1815, after his father's abdication following the defeat at Waterloo. After the deposition and exile of the Bonaparte family in July 1815, or at least from Napoleon I's death in 1821, he was Bonapartist claimant to the throne until 1832. Died 1832, unmarried, no children. Joseph Bonaparte, Napoleon I's oldest brother, former King of Spain, claimant 1832–44. Died 1844, 2 daughters but no legitimate male children. Louis Bonaparte, Napoleon I's second youngest brother, former King of Holland, claimant 1844–46. Died 1846. Louis Napoleon Bonaparte, the only living legitimate child of Louis Bonaparte, claimant 1846–73. He was President of France 1849–52, and under the name Napoleon III ruled as Emperor 1852–70. Napoleon Eugene, Prince Imperial, the only legitimate child of Napoleon III, claimant 1873–79, styled Napoleon IV by his supporters. Died 1879, unmarried, no children. Napoleon Joseph Charles Paul Bonaparte, nicknamed Plon-Plon, the only male child of Jerome Bonaparte, Napoleon I's youngest brother, with Katharina of Württemberg. Claimant 1879–91, however, Eugene Bonaparte's will excluded him from the succession in favor of his son Napoleon Victor, leading to fierce disputes among the increasingly irrelevant Bonapartist circle. Died 1891. Napoleon Victor Jérôme Frédéric Bonaparte, eldest son of Plon-Plon, claimant 1879–1926. Until his father's death in 1891, he and his father both claimed the throne. Died 1926. Louis Jerome Victor Emmanuel Leopold Marie Bonaparte, son of Napoleon Victor, claimant 1926–97. Died 1997. Charles Marie Jérôme Victor Napoleon Bonaparte, the son of Napoleon Louis, claimant since 1997. Bonapartiste, as a Marxist epithet. Karl Marx was a student of Jacobinism and the French Revolution, as well as a contemporary critic of the Second Republic and Second Empire. He used the term Bonapartism to refer to a situation in which counter-revolutionary military officers seize power from revolutionaries, and then use selective reformism to co-opt the radicalism of the popular classes. In the process, Marx argued, Bonapartists preserve and mask the power of a narrower ruling class. He saw Napoleon I and Napoleon III as having both corrupted revolutions in France in this way. Marx offered this definition of an analysis of Bonapartism in the 18th Brumaire of Louis Bonaparte, written in 1852. In this document, he drew attention to what he calls the phenomenon's repetitive history with one of his most quoted lines. History repeats itself, first as tragedy, then as farce. A Bonapartist regime for Marx appears to have great power, but only because there is no class with enough confidence or power to firmly establish its authority in its own name. So a leader who appears to stand above the struggle can take the mantle of power. It is an inherently unstable situation, where the apparently all-powerful leader is swept aside once the struggle is resolved one way or the other. The term was used by Trotsky to refer to Stalin's regime, which Trotsky believed was balanced between the proletariat, victorious but shattered by war, and the bourgeoisie, broken by the revolution but struggling to re-emerge. However, the failure of Stalin's regime to disintegrate under the shock of the Second World War, and indeed its expansion into Eastern Europe, challenged this analysis. Many Trotskyists thus rejected the idea that Stalin's regime was Bonapartist, and some went further, notably Tony Cliff, who described such regimes as state capitalist and not worker states at all. Some modern-day Trotskyists and others on the left use the phrase left Bonapartist more loosely to describe those like Stalin and Mao who control left-wing or populist authoritarian regimes. Bonapartism and the French Right. According to historian René Raymond's 1954 book, Les Droites en France, Bonapartism constitutes one of the three French right-wing families or political groupings. It is the latest one, and developed after Legitimism and Orleanism. According to him, both Boulangisme and Gaullism are considered to be forms of Bonapartism. Other Bonapartists. In 1976, when dictator Jean Bedel Bokassa, a great admirer of Napoleon, made himself Emperor Bokassa I of Central Africa, he declared the ideology of his regime was Bonapartism, and added golden bees to his imperial standard. Raymond Hinnebusch has characterized Hafez al-Assad's regime in Syria as Bonapartist.